Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street. I can't wait to share this episode with you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast, where today I am really excited to be announcing that we are going to start a new series for this podcast, which technically is also called The Business of Apparel, but it is revealing the secrets behind the billion-dollar brands in the apparel industry. And so this is what I have been working on quite a bit throughout 2023, is figuring out how to best get this information to you. Because oddly enough, whenever I go on Google or when I'm searching the internet trying to figure out how people are getting their information in order to grow their apparel business or figure out what it is that they need to be doing to behave like some of the biggest brands out there, the information is either completely missing or it's unfortunately wrong. And while there is some generic information out there about starting a brand, and that can definitely be applied to an apparel brand, there's just a lot that we do inside the walls of our big corporate industry that are not being shared. And so as someone who spent 17 years inside those walls, I really wanted the chance to bring that forward and give the knowledge to you without you having to feel like you need to also go get a job inside the apparel industry. I interestingly was talking to one of my clients the other day, and we kind of got to talking back about one of the first pieces of advice that she was given when she started her brand. And she had reached out to a friend who was inside the industry and just kind of asked, what are the first few things that I should be doing as I start my apparel brand? And her friend told her to go get a job for 5 years inside the apparel industry. Because a lot of us know that the information that we get by sitting at a desk for 5, 10, 15, 17 years inside these jobs is not the same information that we can get outside of working inside those industries. And so I think that's just a little bit unfair. And I wanted to be able to figure out how to share everything that I've learned. I have worked at some of the biggest brands in our industry. When I worked at Abercrombie, it was a huge conglomerate at the time. It was making money hand over fist. If you're interested in learning more about the actual time that I worked at Abercrombie, there is a Netflix documentary. And yes, I did work there during that time when it was all a little bit questionable. I still absolutely loved my job there at Abercrombie. When I was there, it was there may have been some stuff going on behind the scenes, but I was an intern, an assistant, and then an associate when I was there. So I wasn't really involved in any huge conversations or anything going on at any managerial or C-level executive processes. So not to recuse myself from whatever was going on there, but I was getting the chance to just do patterns every day. I was learning how to become an amazing pattern engineer. I got to work in Adobe Illustrator every day, and I got to be creative, and I was learning how to fit garments and the tricks of the trade in that area. And I really loved my job there. I really loved my manager there. Karen Steidel and we actually even got on the phone not too long ago just to catch up. She and I have been able to a little bit stay in touch from time to time. Her family is just so amazing. I think the last time I saw her in person, her kids were babies, and now they're all grown up and in high school, and it's kind of bonkers. But I did really love that job, but I learned so much about how a big company like that works and how being a cog in that big wheel can be really key and important, and it can be a great way to build a career. And so I was able to take that into working then with some smaller brands. Fossil was a big brand. It makes a lot of money through its watches and bags and everything else that it makes in the way of leather goods. But Fossil's apparel line was very small. And so when I was there, it doesn't even exist anymore. It was so small, they decided to divest from it. And when I was there, being able to kind of capture what I had learned from Abercrombie in the way of big corporate process and apply it to a small apparel line, and then be able to help that team figure out how to put standards in place and how to write tech packs in a certain way. We were all in Excel at the time. So all of our tech packs were in Excel. We were doing patterns by hand. We were just doing fittings on whomever. And so helping that team really get all of that kind of cleaned up and put process in place was something that was great for me to be able to do at a young age. And it also really gave me that bug, number one, for learning, which I am still trying to feed as much as I possibly can. But number two, it gave me the opportunity to realize what it can be like if you are not one of those bigger brands who has the processes already all figured out for you. And so as a small apparel line, all of a sudden at Fossil, we were having to figure it out on the fly. And that's something that I definitely really clung to. That was something that was really interesting to me. And it's something that I'm now really proud to be able to bring to my clients through learning that in my corporate jobs. So I feel like one of the biggest issues that we see inside the apparel industry is the lack of sharing knowledge. And I know I've talked about this a little bit before, and I hate to keep harping on it, but brand to brand, even, it's really difficult to understand what it is that the brand down the street is doing from you. So if they're running a process or they have figured out like a perfect timeline or a schedule or a calendar, there's no real access to me as a different brand to figure out what it is that they're doing and how they're succeeding and what it is that's making them make more money maybe than I am. There's just very little benchmarking happening between brand to brand. And so you can imagine how that then trickles out to brands who aren't even a part of the big conglomerates, right? Like newcomers into our industry are having a really hard time figuring out what it is that's going on. They don't know what to do. And so you start to feel kind of like you're sitting on the sidelines, like you're being benched for this game and you want to be in, you want to be put in that game so that you can play and you can figure it out and you can make the mistakes on the field with your team. You know, I hate to use sports analogies, but you know, as a performance apparel brand, maybe this is perfect. But this is definitely something that I have seen with a ton of my clients. You know, they feel like an outsider in this industry that they've decided to make their life and their career. And I just think that that is so wrong to not have the information that you need when it is out there. It's just not being shared appropriately. And so I have been taking quite a bit of my time throughout 2023 figuring out how to organize a lot of the information that's missing, but that I know. And there are a lot of great processes that I've learned, especially as I came into the latter half of my career, figuring out how to do product management, how to do line planning. You know, I was really taught all of the different nuances with business leadership. Like, what does it look like to understand your costing and not just your margin percentage per unit, but for an entire season of product that's out there? How do you roll it up to a weighted margin so you really know what kind of money you're making? All of those aspects can be extremely complicated. And if you don't have someone at your fingertips to be able to teach you how to do those things or show you how to write the formulas in the spreadsheet or how to calculate it out, it can be an impossible feat to achieve. And I don't want you to feel that way anymore. I don't want it to feel impossible. I want you to be able to learn from me what I know so that you can amplify your business, you can amplify your career, and you can go out there and get the raise, get the money, get the revenue that you've always been dreaming of. So I have been building out this Business of Apparel course. By revealing the secrets of the billion-dollar industry, I really wanted to first start out with teaching you how to create standards for your brand. And a lot of this is stuff that we learn as entrepreneurs. So if you are, maybe you're starting your own apparel line out there and you've already heard a lot about being able to niche down and choose your target customer wisely. How are you defining that person? How are you speaking to one to make sure that you're not trying to speak to everybody, which essentially means you're speaking to nobody. So how do you define that person? How do you keep them in your mind's eye so that when you're making any decision for your product or for your brand, you're thinking about them and removing your personal opinions from it? Because at the end of the day, if you continue to keep your personal opinions driving your business forward, you might find that you're going to take things too personally. You might find that it's too hard to make your decisions. But if you have that North Star of someone that you're constantly thinking of, and you know what they would like or what they would need in the way of product, in the way of costing, in the way of quality of their garments, it's really going to help you figure out how to make those decisions in a much better way. So we dive really deep into that because I think it's one of the most important things. And I think it's also one of the most missed things inside of our industry. As young professionals, I don't know that I ever heard any of my brands that I was at talk about our target customer. And it's something that as I progressed throughout my career, when I started working with some really great leaders, they were coming into regular old fittings. Like we would be having a fitting on a random day with our fit model, and they would be coming in reminding us, what does our target customer want out of this fit? Stop discussing amongst yourselves what you think your opinion is. What does our target customer want? And all of a sudden, light bulbs were going off. It was all of a sudden a wonderful way to work because not only did it help us make decisions faster, knowing what it was that our customer would want, it helped our team to really almost get along better because instead of having those little arguments about where this line should go or how big the pocket should be or what kind of zipper do we want to use, our personal opinions were able to come out of it, and we were able to just focus on what was right for that target avatar person. So we're going to talk about that first and foremost. That is one of the biggest secrets to, I think, having an amazing brand and having amazing clarity on how you want to move forward. We're going to talk about some other brand standards, like what it looks like to be either a trends-based business or an innovations-based business. We're going to talk about naming your product, what kind of people you need to have in the room when you're naming your product so that you're not having to figure out how to do it over and over again. Have you ever done a project and feel like, this feels so good. I can check this off the list. It is all done. And then you present it to another team, like maybe your marketing team or your sales team. And they're like, yeah, we can't do it that way. Or yeah, this is wrong because XYZ. And you're just crushed because you just spent so much time and you felt like you really did a good job with that project. That is how I always think about naming. Naming a product can be really personal. It can be something that you're really excited to do. Maybe you come up with the most brilliant name for a jacket in your line and you're super excited to assign it and get it out to the customer. You then present it to your sales team and to your marketing team, and they all go, yeah, that's not really aligned with our brand. Or this brand over here actually has the exact same name on their product. And so I really don't recommend that we do that. So we're going to talk about that a lot and making sure that we have the right people in the right rooms when we do naming. I'm also going to tell you some tips that I have on the way of naming and how I really like to build an initial line plan versus what we need to do when we really need to get into the nitty-gritty of naming our product. Most of what I want to teach in this podcast series and what is coming out in the course, we're also going to be doing some free workshops in 2024. Is a lot of the numbers behind the brand and kind of demystifying what it looks like to crunch your numbers on a daily basis. As a product manager, I had my line sheet open on my desktop every single day. I almost had to have 2 monitors just because I needed to have my line sheet up on one monitor at all times. It was really important for me to be able to capture and visualize all of my numbers, all of my data in one place, so that when anybody asked me about our product line or anybody asked me a question about what was going on, I knew it. It was right at my fingertips. It was right there on my screen. And I was learning it and evaluating it so much and so often that if I was in a meeting and someone needed to ask me something about my line, I knew it because it's something that I did every single day. And so learning those numbers, learning what it is that you need to do in the way of target costing with your factory. So when do I give target costing to my factory? How do I calculate that out? How do I determine what a target cost is? Well, a lot of that is going to depend on what margin you want to hit with your product. We're going to talk about margin percentages. What is good? What is bad? What's in the middle? What's wholesale margin percentages versus direct to consumer margin percentages? What's good or bad there? If you know those margin percentages and you're working inside this spreadsheet that is going to be my gift to you, you will also be able to then figure out what your target costs should be, which will allow you to work with your team and allow you to work with your manufacturer in a way upfront that will get you the kind of product you need and get you the kind of costing that you need in a much easier and simplified way than if you were just asking for them to give you your best price, or if you were letting your design team just put every single item that they want on that garment and design to their heart's content. If you're able to know target costs upfront, design into that cost, share that cost with your manufacturer, have them help you hit your target costs upfront, you are going to be a lot more successful when it comes to revenue planning and when it comes to margin percentages at the end of the day. Of course, you know that I'm going to teach about SKU rationalization in depth. I still think this is one of the least tapped and one of the most important processes that we do inside the apparel industry. I don't think enough brands do this on a regular basis, and I don't even know if a lot of them do it right. And so what I want to do is teach you what I've learned working inside a brand that really did SKU rationalization properly. I've learned from some of the best in the industry. If you're interested, you can go back and listen to the podcast episode where I interviewed Sarah White, who was my merchandiser when I was at Specialized, who taught me all about SKU rationalization and everything that she knows about merchandising, which allowed me to be able to apply this to our apparel line. Without that knowledge and without that process, we would not have gone from a $25 million brand to a $60 million brand in a single year. It was all SKU rationalization, taking out the products that weren't working for us, amplifying the ones that were working for us. That was 100% what led to almost triple the revenue growth in my last year there. I will also walk you through a lot of what it looks like to do revenue planning, setting goals, and working backward from that goal to make sure that you're hitting your sales numbers. We're going to talk about forecasting, which is one of the most complicated processes, I think, really in any industry. Being able to make a really educated guess so that you have that like Goldilocks scenario of just the right amount of inventory in your warehouse. I don't want too much because I don't want it left over on my books. I don't want too little because I want to be able to maximize the amount of sales to my customers. How do I hit that perfect, just right number? Well, I don't know that we're always going to be able to do that, but I will give you my advice on when you should be doing all of your forecasting every year and some of the best methods that I've learned on how to do it, either looking at historicals or figuring out how to apply growth to your forecast so that you watch your company grow. And last but not least, you guys know I am not going to be able to do any sort of teaching or workshop or any sort of podcast series like this without talking about calendars and timeline. Total calendar nerd here, like true confession. I have been a calendar planner, absolute user since I was a kid. And it is just really important to me to relay to you that staying on schedule and launching on time can make or break your business. You know, if you are trying to launch a wintered down puffy jacket in June because you didn't launch on time in December, you are going to have a really hard time hitting your sales numbers until you get to that new winter season. So being able to launch on time, understanding timelines and calendars is crucial to any business. And so I'm going to not just walk you through how I build a timeline and a calendar, but if you are also a member of the course and come on with that, I am going to be gifting you some of my timeline templates where you basically just need to put in, this is my launch date, and all of those key milestones are going to populate for you. So this is a really great tool. I know there are a lot of brands out there who get really frustrated about timelines and calendars. I know it can be terrible to have a consultant come on or a freelancer come on, or even have someone come onto your team permanently. Maybe you're hiring a full-time executive to come on and help you run your business. And they're telling you, you know, we need to start designing and developing a year out from when we want to launch. I know nobody wants to hear that. It feels like a really long time. It feels ridiculous. But think about making your apparel as if you were cooking. Let's make a cooking analogy here. I love to cook. So I was watching this cooking show not too long ago, and someone on it said, you know, you cook for people that you love. So take your time with it and make the food great. Like, take your time. Don't rush the chopping and have all of these big pieces of veggies in there that aren't supposed to be that way. And don't rush the cooking so that you burn it. And don't rush the process. You should put love into it. You should put passion into it. When you're talking about giving your customers something that you have put your blood, sweat, and tears into, something that you stand behind for your brand, you should be taking your time and putting all of the love into it that you can. And so thinking about it that way and understanding that if you truly want to have a quality garment and you want to launch on time so that you don't miss your sales window, adhering to the advice that a lot of us will give you to look at a 9 to 12 month calendar for developing apparel is really important, and it just is really logical for your brand. So I'm going to walk you through some of that. We're going to talk a lot about timelines and calendar because I love it. And then there are so many other free giveaways that we have coming with the course. If you're going to be attending the free workshops that we're going to be doing in 2024, those are going to be some other options for you to get some free downloads. We're going to be doing some giveaways during the workshops, so keep your eye out for those exciting news things. But first, I'm just so excited to give all of this information to you in this podcast series as well. So in the next few series of this podcast, I'm going to actually be diving deep into a few of the key topics, teaching you essentially exactly what I know so that you can learn it too. If you have any questions or comments on what is coming up through the series, please feel free to contact me anytime. And I would love to ask you to write a review of the podcast. It would mean so much to me if you would just let me know what you think of it. So here's to you learning all that you can about the apparel industry. And I'll see you next week with our first series, learning all of the actual module information. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, unmarkedstreet.com, where I do weekly trainings through my video channel, a monthly newsletter, and offer so many resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand.